Following Donald Trump's re-election in November 2024, the relationship between Canada and the United States has sharply declined. Initially marked by policy disagreements, tensions have escalated into an unusually hostile standoff between two historically close allies. This deterioration has been fueled by inflammatory remarks from President Trump and a significant shift in his administration's approach to Canada. In December 2024, shortly after his victory, Trump shocked many by suggesting the possibility of annexing Canada. During a meeting with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau at Mar-a-Lago, Trump reportedly joked that Canada could sidestep U.S. tariffs by becoming the 51st state. Addressing Trudeau mockingly as Governor Justin Trudeau of the great state of Canada, Trump's comments were met with astonishment, even from his supporters. This statement was later confirmed by sources within the White House. Days later, Trump escalated the rhetoric on his social media platform Truth Social, stating that many Canadians believed they would benefit from becoming part of the United States, citing lower taxes, a stronger economy, and real healthcare. He accompanied the post with an altered image of Canadian hockey legend Wayne Gretzky imposed on a U.S. flag, suggesting Gretzky should run for governor of what Trump called our new state. Initially dismissed as political theater, Trump continued to press the idea in subsequent appearances. In a January 2025 press conference, he declared that the U.S. would not need to invade Canada but could annex it economically, claiming that Canada was more dependent on the U.S. than vice versa. He later shared an image of the U.S. and Canada under a single flag, captioned, "Oh Canada, now our Canada." The rhetoric soon translated into policy. On February 1, 2025, Trump imposed a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, justifying the decision with baseless claims about Canada's failure to prevent illegal immigration and drug trafficking. At a rally in North Carolina, Trump remarked that if Canada became part of the U.S., it would eliminate border issues, tariffs, and economic disputes, presenting it as a win-win solution. These statements were seen by Canadian officials as provocative and an existential threat to the country's sovereignty. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, facing immense domestic pressure, condemned Trump's remarks as disrespectful and reaffirmed that Canada's sovereignty was non-negotiable. By March 2025, the tariffs were fully in effect, sparking a retaliatory trade war unprecedented in the history of U.S.-Canada relations. Trudeau's successor, Mark Carney, described the situation as a crisis of historic proportions and called for a national election to consolidate political support against what he termed as economic coercion. In response, a surge of Canadian nationalism emerged. Grassroots campaigns urging citizens to boycott American goods gained momentum, with hashtags like #BuyCanadian and #BoycottUSA trending widely. Canadian businesses prioritized domestic and European alternatives over U.S. imports, and consumers actively avoided American retailers and products. These efforts began to impact cross-border trade and industries reliant on Canadian markets. On the defense front, Canada initiated a review of its procurement agreements with U.S. contractors, focusing on the controversial $19 billion F-35 fighter jet program. Skepticism grew about the program's strategic value in light of the deteriorating relationship. Public figures, including NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, called for its cancellation, advocating instead for investment in domestic defense innovation and European partnerships. The Canadian government also intensified efforts to diversify its trade relationships. Trade Minister Mary Ng led initiatives to strengthen ties with the European Union, including enhancing the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement (CETA). These discussions aimed to simplify market access and explore energy exports to Europe, providing alternatives to Russian energy. Similarly, Canada pursued trade agreements with Indo-Pacific nations like Indonesia and Ecuador and increased delegations to Australia, Singapore, and Brunei. Canada and Mexico, both affected by U.S. trade policies, began exploring closer trade collaboration. Discussions included strengthening their bilateral framework and joint strategies to mitigate the economic impact of U.S. actions. Provinces across Canada implemented their own measures to counter U.S. policies. British Columbia targeted U.S. agricultural imports like dairy and poultry while tightening border inspections. Quebec froze negotiations with American contractors and launched campaigns promoting locally made alternatives to U.S. products. Other provinces encouraged public institutions to prioritize Canadian suppliers, amplifying the economic effects of retaliation. Facing these challenges, Prime Minister Mark Carney called a national election for April 28, 2025, seeking a mandate to confront the rising tensions. Carney framed the election as a battle for Canada's sovereignty, accusing Trump of attempting to undermine the country's independence. He promised tax cuts for low-income Canadians, scrapped the carbon tax, and paused increases to capital gains taxes. Carney also initiated a review of major U.S. defense contracts and prioritized diplomatic efforts to strengthen ties with Europe. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre has also taken a firm stance, calling for strong retaliatory measures and proposing alternatives to reduce reliance on the U.S. while advocating for decisive action. He emphasized the importance of maintaining respectful diplomacy to protect Canada's interests. His populist approach has resonated with voters focused on economic issues like inflation and housing shortages, though Trump's aggressive rhetoric has shifted the political narrative toward nationalism. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh has been a vocal critic of Trump, proposing measures such as barring him from the G7 summit and blocking critical mineral exports to the U.S. Singh dismissed Trump's annexation rhetoric, emphasizing Canada's independence and criticizing American policies as an affront to Canadian values. Amid these developments, Canadian public opinion has shifted significantly. Polls indicate a growing desire to reduce economic reliance on the U.S. and heightened skepticism toward American policies. This collective sentiment has united Canadians across political lines, reinforcing a renewed commitment to national sovereignty and self-reliance. As the election approaches, the political landscape is dominated by debates on how best to address the U.S. threat while safeguarding Canada's future.